I want to welcome you to Chapter Endnotes, where we will be discussing this month Rules for Visiting by Jessica Francis Kane. Here's what I want to go through in our time that we have here together. I want to talk about our author's bio, and then I want to talk about the very big year she had, which was 2019. If time permits, I would also like to dive into the many fun allusions in the book. We can't possibly get to all of them. The structure of the book, the themes. I want to talk a little bit about friendship, May's rules for visiting, some interesting quotes. Excuse me. And then I would like to open it up to questions. And I have a lot of questions about this book. Again, time permitting, I would love to touch on all the nature, the flora and fauna, etc., that we're treated to in this book. So to kick us off, we'll talk about the book itself when we begin our discussion. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background right now. Yay. All right. That was the beautiful title screen. Here is our author, Jessica Francis Kane. I'll tell you a little bit about her, which will be a wonderful entree to understand how the book came to be. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. We will not hold it against her that she grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She graduated from Yale University, and she lives in New York City with her husband and her children. In 2002, our author published her first short story collection called Bending Heaven. In 2010, her next book came out called The Report, and it won all types of awards. Let's just put it that way. In 2012 is where we find that I see glimpses of inspiration for rules of visiting. She writes an article in the Missouri Review called Essentials in Acceleration. Rules for Visiting, Essentials in Acceleration. And this story ended up becoming the basis for her second novel, Rules for Visiting. So I'm going to just read a brief excerpt of this article. I'm a good driver, and by this, I don't mean just safe. Like a good runner who doesn't waste motion in her stride, I maneuver my car with dexterity and precision. I merge slowly without braking. In 3 moves, I can parallel park on both sides of the street. One of my best friends is a mechanic, the corner garage. He respects my studious approach to the art of driving, etc., etc., etc. Leo, the mechanic, is Mexican. His family also owns Guadalajara across the street, where I occasionally have a burrito. So I thought that was very fun to unfold, so I needed to share that with you. In 2016, a play based on the novel, The Report, premiered at the New York International Fringe Festival. So like I said, 2019 was her big year. So let me tell you about this year. In McSweeney's Internet Tendency, which was kind of like an internet forum, we called it a message board, whatever. She publishes this article called Amanda Davis Superfriend. Amanda Davis is her inspiration for Amber Dwight, who is the woman that she talks about in the novel. I am going to summarize this rather long article that she wrote for McSweeney's. And again, you'll be able to see the threads of how we end up reading the book that we just read for our selection. In 2003, she moves from London back to Charlottesville with a new baby and her husband, and she's feeling incredibly isolated. It is pre-social media, and McSweeney's Internet Tendency was a place for her to come and feel connected to other authors. She read about Amanda Davis, an author who died in a plane crash, and completely obsessed over her because she seemed to be such a good friend to people. And McSweeney's internet tendency ended up becoming a place, like a town square, like a internet shiva, where people could come together to grieve and celebrate the loss of this author, including Michael Chabon. I found a posting from him. So she says, it so happened that one day she opens her laptop in March for her daily dose of humor, because they published humorous articles daily. And instead on her screen, she sees this. Memories of Amanda Davis. Dear readers, on Friday afternoon, March 14th, the plane carrying Amanda Davis and her parents crashed into a mountain in North Carolina. There were no survivors. Our author was stunned because she admired this woman's work, and she was kind of following her successful writing career over the years. And she was so happy that she was on this book tour, etc. She says, I'd never met Amanda Davis, but I knew who she was, and I was stunned. I'd been following her progress. She'd done what I hoped to do. After publishing a story collection called Circling the Drain, she'd written a first novel called Wonder When You'll Miss Me. And she was on a publicity tour. I just seen a news story about how her father, who had a small plane pilot's license, was flying her around the country to events. And then she continues. Amanda Davis was one of the funniest, the article continues. Amanda was one of the funniest, most self-effacing, chutzpah charged, and big-hearted human beings anyone could ever hope to encounter. To meet her was to always be a historical event, one you would remember for the rest of your life. The author goes on to say, the author of this article you're looking at here, she announced the site would serve as a forum for people who knew and loved Amanda to share stories about her. And the page had links to places where the stories could be accessed all over the internet. I also fell down this rabbit hole. And I have to say, even in death, you can feel the life of Amanda Davis. She was like our author now describes her as someone who was the superhero of friendship. She was someone who could make a quality connection with anyone she met. I don't know if any one of you have an Amanda Davis in your life. I hope we all do. She read this site that you're looking at every day for weeks and then months. She said she happened to agree with something that was written by author Megan Mayhew Bergman, quote, "A writer's material arrives in the form of an obsession, a need for the close and uncomfortable scrutiny of an idea. Something with our author hit a nerve reading this blog." So she started to do some self-reflection, and here is what she shares. My first best friend moved away in the first grade. I lost her. My second best friend came to town for a year when we were 12 and then moved away. I didn't lose her, but she was always far away. And this was at a time when long-distance phone calls were expensive. So I learned not to rely on friends too much. They were always leaving. Okay. So she says she makes it through middle school, high school, and college, and she accumulates friends. However, she always felt she was, quote, the beneficiary of their dedication. She was not the one doing the work to keep the friendships. But Amanda Davis, reading about Amanda Davis, she was inspired to do better. And I don't know if any of this rings true or sounds familiar, but I will be asking you later, do you know an Amanda Davis, or do you feel you're at one end or another of the friendship relationships? Anyway, further on, reading this article, this one right here, I came to find other things that show up in our book Rules of Visiting, so I feel compelled to share these with you. On page 169, she talks about something called the Dunbar number, of which I was unaware, so I had to fall down that rabbit hole. And she says in her article that she started noticing information in the news about the science of friendship. And this happened once we had the rise of social media, and all of a sudden, friend became a verb. To friend, friending, unfriend. She says the Dunbar number is the maximum number of people with whom one can maintain a meaningful relationship. And what scientists started to notice with the rise of social media, our Dunbar number started to shrink. We were spending less and less time with real friends. Well, I had to know more about the Dunbar number. So I found this out. You won't be surprised to know that this number was proposed in the 1990s by a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar. And this anthropologist found a correlation between a primate brain size and the average group size. So by extrapolating the size of all the results of all the primates' brains, he proposed that we can comfortably have about 150 stable relationships. Do you? There is some evidence that, this can fluctuate between 100 and 250, but either way, this is the rabbit hole that our author is falling through as she's feeling rather lonely, being a new mom, coming back to America after living in London and having a good time there, etc. So from reading this article, she starts collecting quotes about friendship, and we see these peppered throughout the book. It is in the 30s, we want friends. In the 40s, we know they won't save us any more than love did. That's F. Scott Fitzgerald. Without wearing any mask we are conscious of, we have a special face for each friend. Oliver Wendell Holmes. It is easier to visit friends than to live with them. Chinese proverb. So this is all happening around the time Elena Ferrante quartet of books was becoming super duper hot. So she started seeking out her own books on friendship. And here are some of her books on friendship, and you will have access to this. Don't feel you need to take a screenshot or anything in the replay library. Here are some books that she recommends in her article that she thinks are great insight to friendships. And maybe these would make good gifts for this coming holiday season. I don't know. But the reason why you see a separate piece highlighted in green is because for many years, I've been bringing this title. The title is a favorite of one of our book club members. I've been bringing this to book club and it never gets chosen. So maybe now, and not endorsed by me, but by Jessica Francis Kane, it can come back and no longer be a bridesmaid, but an actual selection. I don't know. Can you say that anymore? I don't care because I am. I hope it can't be a bridesmaid. It can actually be a bride. And perhaps we could delve into a separate piece. Unless, of course, we've already read it and I've completely forgotten, because, of course, that is a very good possibility as well. Oops, sorry. Where'd y'all go? Uh-oh. Where are we? Hold on 1 minute. I'm sorry. I happen to have a 25-pound Cavalier King Charles Spaniel that's sitting right here on my desk and just decided to stretch. All right, moving forward. Let me go back just a little bit here. She also talks in this article about a book bag. Okay. She says, one day I was running on the Hudson River path when I saw someone carrying a book bag that said, my best friend is someone who ... And of course, this opens up in our book, right? Except she's in an airport. She said, I I realized I wanted to try to answer this from a perspective I'd not found in a book, that of a difficult person, meaning herself, trying to be a better friend. So she went home and she typed that line, okay, a best friend is someone who, into a new file in a folder she labeled, quote, Amanda Davis, which became, after many drafts, the story of my character, May Attaway, in Rules for Visiting. So I know some of you here are writers, and I think it's so interesting to see the creative process. So in memory of Amanda Davis, who is no longer with us, our author, and I also today say we owe a great debt of gratitude to her. Her vision of friendship was huge and also all encompassing. And I also feel in our book group, we've also become friends between the pages, and I absolutely love that. Here are the books that our author has written. And all of these books, all of them, have won all kinds of awards. And I want to get to the talking part. So I'm just going to say, just trust me. All of these books have been well received. She definitely seems like she is in that world of a writer's writer. And I kind of feel like we've uncovered a gem here. And I want to thank, this again was a title that was brought to the group. This is why our book group is the best book group, period, because we get to peek into books that you normally, well, at least I would have never, ever heard of. So I'm just absolutely thrilled. So she's won awards. She's been shortlisted for awards. The book we've read was named Best Book of the Summer or the Year or whatever by all the popular things, Oprah Magazine, Good Housekeeping, Wall Street Journal, San Francisco Chronicle, Vulture, the Chicago Trib, etc., etc. She's received these dreamy things called fellowships to go right places. I mean, can you even imagine what a charmed life? Anyway, she's written op-eds. You may have seen her work in the New York Times, McSweeney's, Salon, Slate, etc. She's been on NPR. Her stories have been presented on BBC Radio 4, the New York City's MTA Subway Reads program, the Pushcart Prize anthologies. It just goes on and on and on. So I'm going to get out of the slideshow for right now and talk a little bit about, I can't talk about all of them because there were a bazillion, but I was so thrilled to have all the analogies that were shared in the book. We just knew we were in the hands of an author. We were on a journey that was clearly an odyssey. And I just love that. I just feel like we're just in that, in a place where we know it's structured and it's solid and it's built on classical principles. You know, this is whole milk and heavy cream. What butter? I mean, what could be better? So there are so many allusions in this book, beginning with on 49, where we're introduced to Beowulf. Oh my God, what a drag that read was. I can explain it to you if you want, but I'm not going to do it right now. But we meet Beowulf and Grendel. And of course, Grendel reminds me so much of our poor creature in Frankenstein. He's on the outside looking in. And basically, if I had to botch the summary of Beowulf, things don't end so well for Grendel. So I'm going to skip the two-page summary of Beowulf. I know you're all absolutely happy about that. She also brings up May Sarton, who I didn't know, so I was so excited to be exposed to this author. So Eleanor Marie Sarton was a Belgian-American novelist and poet and memoirist. Her best work is strongly personalized, erotic female imagery. She resisted the label of lesbian writer, preferring to convey the universality of human love. The Poetry Foundation describes her writing as calm, cultured, and urbane. It looked like she has some very interesting books. So May Sarton is out there for you if you want to read her, if you haven't been exposed, but something tells me everyone in this group probably knows her but me. Another wonderful, I see Diana shaking her head, and Diana has probably read her in French. I'm just convinced. But anyways, on page 166, The Voyage Around My Room absolutely thrilled me, so I had to look that up. Our author says of this book, it is witty to some, but reads like a horror story to me. When you're alone in a room, time is slow and not particularly nice. Time will wait for you in the dusty corner, tighten you and try to convince you. There's not much point in doing anything. Stay, rest, repeat. Penelope waited upstairs. So did my mother. I don't want to do the same. So in those tiny, tiny sentences, that trifecta of sentences, we learn, again, an allusion to Penelope, then a little nugget, a little foreshadowing about her mother that does not unfold to the end of the book, right? And the idea that she doesn't want to make the same mistake. So Voyage Around the Room was a book called A Journey Around My Room. I won't botch the French, but it was written in 1794, and it was written to stave off boredom while the author, Xavier de Mastre, was serving a 40-day sentence of confinement in his room for participating in an illegal duel. So he writes this book as if it's a travelogue and discusses the contents of the furniture, the imaginary situations, the dialogues. The theme is pleasure can be found in everyday routines. Okay, maybe we all needed this during COVID, right? Obviously, there's also references to Athena, Penelope. I could go on, but I found that incredibly fun. I was amazed in this very slim book that the structure offered us 4 different stories, at least. We could have had a story of tree selections from my dad to be remembered, right? It could have been about visiting friends. It could have been about how your story can be hijacked by someone else, such as when Maria tells May's fortnight friend story. It could be a story of Leo's postcards. I mean, just so beautifully done. Our themes are friendship, loneliness, appearances are deceiving. And of course, so many friends in this book for someone who doesn't know how to deal with friends. Lindy, Vanessa, Nira, Rose, Sue, Leo, Dad, and just the entire cast of neighbors. I have 2 pages worth of characters. I can read them to you. It's packed with characters. We also are treated to writers' beliefs about friendships. Epicurus, Aristotle, Cicero, Montaigne, Oscar Wilde, C.S. Lewis. I mean, she's just throwing this stuff at us page after page. And interestingly, she takes from nature and implants the behaviors and survival instincts of nature and how that reflects on nurturing friendships. She says on page 61, for cross-species friendship, 3 criteria must be met. The bond must be sustained for a period of time. Both animals must be engaged. There must be some sort of accommodation on both sides. This means if you own cats, this is not a friendship. This is your cat ruling your world. So you just have to face cats are smarter. Okay. A few quotes from the book on friends that I really enjoyed. I'm going to just go back now to the PowerPoint. May's father says, you have to decide if you're going to take the bad with the good. And she goes on to say, it sounds like you only make that decision once, but in real life, you're making up for that over and over and over again, aren't we? On page 83, quote, we take care of friends as we find them, not as we would make them. Samuel Johnson, you should have been a marriage therapist. Okay, next. May has her own rules for visiting. Again, you'll be able to have access to this in the Repay library, but I think they're very good rules. And I think the number one resonates most with me. I will be asking you what resonates most with you. Every time my parents would come visit, they would walk through the door and the first things out of their mouths would be, "Oh my God, we saw a terrible accident. It was terrible." We had to hear about every terrible accident from the Ohio to Kentucky state line all the way down until they pulled off a 95 here in Jacksonville. There were many terrible, terrible accidents. And I know it was their way of saying, "We're exhausted. We're here. You better appreciate the schlep we just made." But it would have sufficed to just say, "Oh my gosh, we're just so glad to see you." But that's okay because that's family, right? All right. This is not a therapy session, so we're moving forward. A question I will have for you is, do you have your own rules for visiting? Of course, she treats us with wonderful quotes about visiting from our favorite authors. It was a delightful visit, perfect, and being much too short. That is our wonderful Jane Austen. Fish and visitors stink in 3 days, Benjamin Franklin. And I was so tickled because she references the Dickinson versus Anderson drama of the 1800s. So I think it was 18, might be the 1900s. But I will remind you, because if you were not here when we discussed Hans Christian Andersen, this is so worth serving a little tea, I may say. We know that Hans Christian Andersen ruined his friendships with Charles Dickens by staying with him 3 weeks longer than planned. He stayed with him for 5 weeks. And it was a bad idea because so we're in March of 1857. And we find this out because recently there was an auction of letters of Dickens, and we find him fetching and complaining in these letters about what a nightmare it was to have this man at his house, Hans Christian Andersen. So Andersen in March of 1857, announces, "I'm coming for a short summer stay, a fortnight at most." 2 weeks? I don't think so. And Andersen writes, "My visit is intended for you alone. Above all, just leave me a small corner in your heart." Okay, after 5 weeks, this is what Dickens has to say. He writes to the Prime Minister, his friend Lord John Russell, quote, "He spoke French like Peter the Wild Boy and English like the deaf and dumb school." He complained that he wasn't even any good at his own language. He said he couldn't even pronounce the name of his own book, the Improvistore. I can't either. And his translation appears to make out he really can't even speak Danish either. This letter fetched £460. I think that's probably almost, $9,000. He also, Hans Christian Andersen, while visiting, experienced mood swings and wept uncontrollably in the yard after he received an unfavorable review of one of his works. At the time, Dickens was considering leaving his wife, so they weren't on good terms anyway, so this just kind of added to it. After he leaves, he says, he writes to a friend, "Hans Andersen slept in this room for 5 weeks, which seemed to my family ages." And also he talks about when he would go to London, all he would do is drink. So anyway, there are more disputes between friendships and authors. We've discussed Mary McCarthy and Lillian Hellman. Other famous ones, I won't go into their disputes, but Gore Vidal and Truman Capote, and Mario Vargas Llosa and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I went to Emily Post, Definitely Do's and Definitely Don'ts, and I found them very interesting. Make your visit short and sweet, no more than 3 nights. And always bring your own toiletries, clean up after yourself, offer to help out. Offer to pitch in for groceries if you're going to stay for more than 2 or 3 nights. Bring or send a gift or treat your host to a night out, but pick one, and always send a a handwritten note following the visit. No emails, no texts. Don't ever, 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 Emily says, well, at least her great-granddaughter, don't ask to bring your pet. Just leave the pet at home. You could inquire about a kennel, but don't put people out like that. Don't accept an invitation from anyone else while you are there, unless you check with the guest first. Don't hop on the phone, the computer, or any equipment without asking. Don't use more than your share of hot water. And finally, and you know we're all guilty of this, stop snooping. Do not snoop. How can we not snoop? I snoop. Okay, anyway. Now, since the holidays are coming up, House Beautiful recommends 4 things. Don't overstay. And again, it's 3 days, just like Benjamin Franklin says. Do one thing, and that is bring a gift, send a gift when you return home, or offer to take them out to dinner. Quote, but be clear about your intention so they're not expecting a gift later on. So let them know, oh, I'm so excited you're coming. We're going, I want to take you to dinner of your choice. And then it's out of the way. Downtime is key. If you're staying for an extended period, and she describes it as 3 or 4 days. When I go and visit my friend Elizabeth, I'm there for 3 weeks. I'm sure she hates me. Okay, make sure you take downtime. That way the host doesn't expect to entertain you 24/7. Offer to take the kids to the zoo, or just say, look, I'm going to go for a walk. It's key. Everyone needs a little breathing space. Okay, so again, I fell down another rabbit hole. Just stay with me. We are almost wrapped. Remember Amor Towles? Many years ago, we read Rules of Civility. So I went back to the Rules of Civility. And of course, then I had to know why George Washington did Rules of Civility. So just hang with me. When George Washington was a teenager, maybe 14, he wanted to make a good impression. Good manners were important. He made sure that he knew how, by copying Rules of Civility from a French rule book in his own handwriting. It was 110 rules. No, I'm not going to read all of them to you. The rules dealt with difficult situations, how to be respectful, polite, behave. Here are just a few. Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those who are present. So don't text when you're with other humans. In the presence of others, sing not to yourself with the humming noise, nor drum with your fingers or feet. Take your AirPods out of your ears and make contact with someone. I'm updating them. Sleep not when others speak. Sit when not others stand. Speak not when you should hold your peace. Walk not when others stop. When you sit down, keep your feet firm and even without putting one on the other or crossing them. See, very royal. They're very royal, even though we were a little bit against King George. Okay. Do not laugh too loud or too much at any public spectacle. Do not use reproachful language. Don't curse nor revile. Do not gaze at mark and blemishes on others, and ask not how they came to be. So did you just have a facelift? We're not supposed to say that. Okay. What you may speak in secret to your friend, deliver not before others. Undertake not what you cannot perform, but be careful and keep your promise. Finally, speak not evil of the absent, for it is unjust. So these are words to live by. And with that, I am going to stop speaking because I want to hear what all of you have to say. So let me go ahead and, sorry, I have to lie. I have one thing I have to ask. I have to ask this. And then I'm going to wrap it up. Was the Barbie real? I am so freaked out over that Barbie, that whole Barbie scene. So I went down the rabbit hole and I found this from Harvard, which would have impressed me, but now it doesn't. But anyways, there was this thing, Hello Barbie. Please someone tell me if this exists, but I could not find it online. All I could find was this article about it, about digital innovation and transformation, and how parents were freaked out over this Hello Barbie thing. And so when I would follow the links, like I went to Mattel, nothing. Anyway, I went on Amazon looking for it, nothing. Maybe I was just having a brain fog, but this is what I went when I went to Mattel's Meet Hello Barbie. This was a page. So now I'm even more freaked out because it reminds me of Life of Pi. Like, was that a tiger in the boat? Like, what was going, what? I was so flipped out. So now, I'm so sorry. But now I will let you know that on the author's website, she talks about how to plan a visit like May Attaway would. And she gives you 4 little pointers, which all make perfect sense. But the first one is basically, you can't say, I'm in town for a conference. Can I come see you? And stay at your house instead of paying to stay at a hotel. No, it has to be the express purpose of going to see a friend. You must stay at their house. And you must be alive in the space of the friendship. So no social media. You cannot narrate your own visit, and no plans. You should just hang out. You go to the grocery store with her. You do the laundry together. You do whatever it is you need to do. It's just a normal day. That's what our author recommends.